ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Welcome to the English module for Sanchalana for the month of September. For this month, we are again going ahead with the second version of Elements of Speaking English in a Classroom. Module ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಂಚೆ let us look at what are the goals of this module. ನಿಮಗೆ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ತಿಳಿದಿರೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ಮತ್ತೆ ಪುನಃ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಕೇಶನ್ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಅನ್ನ ಎನ್ಹಾನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಯುಟಿಲೈಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. This is one of the goal. And the second goal is to increase the language skills, to enhance and to build and inculcate the language skills. And third is to have Kalika Chetarike scripts and requirements as per the monthly requirements. Moving forward, the main objective of this module is to have an English speaking environment. ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತನಾಡುವಂತ ವಾತಾವರಣನ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡುವಂತದ್ದು ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲಿನ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಉದ್ದೇಶ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ತರಗತಿಯ ಅವಧಿಯನ್ನ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ನಲ್ಲಿ ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಮೂರು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಸಿಂಪಲ್ ಟೂಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಅದನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ಚಟುವಟಿಕೆ ಮೂಲಕ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದೀವಿ. ಹಾಗೇನೆ ನಮಗೆ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಟೆಂಪ್ಲೇಟ್ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಸ್ಪೀಕಿಂಗ್ ಗೆ ಬೇಕಾಗುವಂತ ಟೂಲ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ಕೋಬಹುದು, ಫ್ರೇಮ್ ವರ್ಕ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಕ್ವೆಶ್ಚನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಫ್ರೇಮ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ವೊಕ್ಯಾಬ್ಯುಲರಿ ಸೆಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅಥವಾ ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಸೆಂಟೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ಫ್ರೇಮ್ ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇಕಾಗಿರುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಟೆಂಪ್ಲೇಟ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ಬಳಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೇಗೆ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಕೇಶನ್ ಸ್ಕಿಲ್ ಅನ್ನ ಎನ್ಹಾನ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅನ್ನೋಂಥದ್ದನ್ನ ನೋಡುವಂತಹ ಉದ್ದೇಶವನ್ನ ಹೊಂದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಈ ಮಾಡ್ಯೂಲ್ ಅನ್ನ ನಾವು ತಯಾರಿಸಿದ್ದೇವೆ. Let's just have a recap of what happened in August month Sanchalana. Dear teacher mentors, I have a question for all of you. What are the speaking tools we need to teach a topic in the classroom? The question is, what are the speaking tools we need to teach a topic in the classroom? Can you all let me know what are the speaking tools that we need to teach a topic in the classroom in the chat section? You have 1 minute of time. Yes, as you all said, we spoke about these three language tools in our previous module. The first one is vocabulary set. The second one is simple questions. The third one is simple sentences. Let's just take a recap of what we saw there. So we spoke about vocabulary set. As we all can see, this is something that we saw last time also, right? So it had different categories. Each of the topic that we chose had different categories. For example, if we chose the topic as noun, the language unit noun had 4 categories. Those are types, where we spoke about the types of nouns, and we had a category by name instruction, where we used the words that we give as instruction for a learner to perform some activity. And then we had definition. This category spoke about the words that we use to define the language unit noun. And then we had an exhaustive list of examples like lion, doctor, village, etc. Then we saw about simple questions, the second tool, simple questions, where we saw 2 things. That is, from Kalika Chetarike scripts, we could see some of the sentences, some of the questions that was taken from the Kalika Chetarike scripts that was available in the Teachopia. So along with that, we saw how to frame the questions using the question framework. For example, which is the first month of the year. Here, we all know that we have to replace the word first with any other of its kind. Like maybe we can form a question using the word second by saying which is the second month of the year. And you can replace the word first with third, fourth, or any other of its kind. Then we saw simple sentences, where again we saw some of the sentences from Kalika Chetarike script, like any name, place, animal, or thing is an example of a noun. This was a sentence that was taken from the Kalika Chetarike script that was available in Teachopia. Then we could see sentence framework, where you could replace certain words in the sentence and form new sentences. Like the word lion is a noun because it is a name of an animal. You can find it in a zoo or the jungle. Here the word lion could be replaced by examples of nouns like tiger, book, house. Then you can replace the word animal with the type of the noun that you have replaced earlier. Maybe it's a place, thing, or name. Then the words zoo and the jungle could be replaced with any of the words, examples of places like office, park, or market. In this module, we can see the following milestones and learning outcomes. For grade 4 and 5, you can see milestone 5 and milestone 6, whereas for grade 6 and 7, we will be dealing with 6.6 and 7.5 learning outcomes. This is just a recap. As you all know, there were certain color codes for segments. Whenever you find a blue color slide in during the presentation, that means that is where teacher mentors has to facilitate that particular activity in their respective Sanchalana center on Saturday. And if you find a slide with a purple color, then that means that is where you will get the tip for performing that particular activity. It narrates how a teacher mentor should carry out this activity or what the teacher mentor should do during that particular activity. Then we can find something in green color, which means those are the things that those are the sentences, those are the questions that we have taken directly from the Kalika Chetarike script that is available on Teachopia. And then we have another slide which is of yellow color, which means it's a post webinar activity. These are some of the activity ideas that teacher mentors can carry out on Saturday after the webinar is over. This time in the slides, you can see these icons where if you see an icon of an ear, that means this activity or this slide is only for listening, where teachers have to listen to these particular slides. Then if you find a man and a speech bubble in the slide, that means this activity is where the teachers have to talk to their mentors. Means that is where you have to elicit responses from teachers directly. And then there would be something, an icon where you can find two people speaking, and that is a pair work activity where you should make sure that these activities are carried out in pairs. And this is for your notice, teacher mentors, that you will have certain poll questions during the Saturday Sanchalana where that would give us an idea about whether teacher mentors require more time to conduct that activity or the given time, within the given time, the teacher mentors are able to complete that activity. So this will help us to design the further modules with the time limit that we will be giving for each particular activity.
Thank you, Kriti. Now let us look at what we are going to learn in this module. That is, we're going to look at what the teachers will be learning in this module. In this module, once again, we're going to look at the three language tools. And this time, we're going to focus a little bit on vocabulary. We're going to see how a simple vocabulary set can be used in helping us frame questions and frame sentences. Next, we're going to be looking at role play and poems. We're going to see how to identify a topic in a role play or a topic in a poem and use the three language tools. Third, we're going to be listening and pronouncing using speech tips. And this time, we're going to be practicing pronunciations using poems and tongue twisters. And also, lastly, we'll be looking at debate. That is, we're going to be looking at some steps to facilitate a debate. Teacher mentors, please note, apart from these segments which will be presented in the teacher training module, we will also be looking at the post-webinar activities where you will be covering some aspects that we will take you through at the end of this module. Now let us begin. So here we have the three language tools we learnt about in the previous module: vocabulary set, simple questions, and simple sentences. We learned that these three tools are needed for us to talk about any topic in the classroom. This time, we're going to look a little bit deeply into the vocabulary set. So, what was a vocabulary set based on what we had discussed last time? If any of you remember, please feel free to respond to us in the chat box. Last time, we had discussed that a vocabulary set was nothing but a set of simple words or phrases associated with a topic and that we would need to know in order to talk about a topic in the classroom. Now, the vocabulary sets that we saw were complex and they had lots of complex categories. For example, we had many different types of categories. A category like month was a very simple concept, whereas a category like noun was a little more complex concept that we called language unit. And a topic like inferring was more complex and we called it comprehension strategy. Now, for each of these topics, we had different types of categories. For months, that is for a simple concept, we had names, descriptions, parts that made up the words that went into the vocabulary set for months. For language units, we had types, instruction, definition, example that made up the vocabulary set that went for language unit. Now, comprehension strategy had different categories for vocabulary sets: definition, instruction, and words from the textbook and workbook. Now, if we want to make a vocabulary set on our own, this may be too hard for us to follow just as yet. That is because we are just starting to use these three tools. These complex vocabulary categories might be harder for us to use. Now, is there a simple and easier way to come up with a vocabulary set where we have simple and easy categories that we can develop on our own as teachers and that we can use in the classroom? So here we have basic categories to develop a vocabulary for any given topic. So this is simply like this. A topic has three basic aspects of a vocabulary. One is it has features. So, features is any vocabulary, that is, words or phrases related to the basic features or characteristics of a topic. Then we have the definition of the topic. That is, any vocabulary. It could be words, it could be phrases. But for this module and moving forward, we will use sentences. These are sentences that is needed to define the topic. Third, we have examples. That is any vocabulary, that is words, used to give examples about this particular topic. Now, this kind of vocabulary set can be used for any topic across any language of learning, whether you're doing simple concepts or whether you're doing grammar units like noun or you're teaching complex strategies like inference and so on. In this module, we are going to learn how to use this simple vocabulary set and also how to integrate or use words from this vocabulary set to enhance our question frameworks and sentence frameworks. Okay, so now let us look at what we have here. Very great inputs. Thank you very much. So, under the definition of vehicle, you would have a simple statement like this: any machine that transports people, animals or things is called a vehicle. Under features, you will have simple features of vehicles: wheels, engine, motor, and so on. Under examples, you will have simple examples like car, boat, cart, bike, and many other examples like Kriti mentioned in this module, and also like we have learned in the previous module. Examples is non-exhaustive list where you can come up with many words, right? So yes, so this is what a vocabulary set for the topic vehicles looks like. Now, language tool number 2. Now that we've come up with a vocabulary set, how can it help us in asking questions and in making sentences? Here is a question framework for the topic vehicle. Do you know what a vehicle is? Now, in the previous module, we had learned that if we replace the keyword in a question framework with another word like its kind, we can come up with many questions. However, is there a way that we can use a vocabulary set that we have just developed for the topic vehicle to help us come up with a lot more words and a lot more questions? Yes. So, do you know what a vehicle is? Here we see that the word vehicle belongs to the category definition, and we can come up with more words or phrases from the category definition here in this to replace vehicle and come up with more questions. For example, we can replace vehicle with another phrase from the definition, a machine that transports people. So here we can ask the question, do you know what a machine that transports people is called? So do you know what a vehicle is? If you replace vehicle with another phrase from the definition, from the same category, we can use it like this. Do you know what a machine that transports people is called? Isn't that great? Okay, now let's try this by ourselves. Here we have another question framework. What has wheels and an engine? Here, wheels and an engine belong to a particular category in the vocabulary set. Can you identify the category and replace wheels and engine with words from the category in this question framework? So I want you to try to come up with another question by replacing the words wheel and engine in this framework from another word in the same category. What has horn and glare? Great. But can we look at where wheel and engine is in this vocabulary set? Where does it belong? It belongs to motor and driver. Exactly. What has a motor and driver? Superb. Great. Can we come up with more questions? What has fuel and brake? Okay. For the purpose of this module, let us try and stick to the vocabulary set here. I'm giving you an additional 10 seconds. What has a wheel? Excellent. What has a carburetor and radiator? Great. If you're including those words in the category, you can definitely use that. Yeah. What has horn and brake? Okay, great. Now, we saw that the words wheels and engine belongs to the category features. So here we will replace the words in the question framework with other words from the same category. So some of you have taken wheels and engine and used motor and driver. So here we can ask questions like what has a motor? If we want to include more words under the features category like carburetor or fuel or brake, like many of you did, we can go on to replace more words in the question framework, right? So here we see how developing a vocabulary set and putting words in different categories helps us use those words and come up with more questions in a question framework. Now, language tool number 3 is simple sentences. How do we use the same thing in simple sentence? Here, we have a combination of categories. You can find an engine and a motor in a car. Now, can you tell me engine and a motor belongs to the category features and the word car belongs to the category example? So in one sentence, we have words from different categories in the vocabulary set. Okay. Now, okay. So here, what we can do is we can replace words from different categories in the same sentence to come up with more sentences. Like someone has just said, you can find door and window in a bus. Excellent. Now you have 1 minute to come up with the another sentence using this sentence framework and replacing words from the given categories. So we have words like car and a machine that transports people that belongs to categories in the vocabulary set for vehicles. Milestone 5 for the grades 4 and 5. Step 3 says discuss the habitat of animals. Now, when you have this as a topic, how do we use the 3 language tools? The first tool is the vocabulary set. Here, as we have seen, we need to come up with 3 simple categories of vocabulary for the topic. So the topic is habitat of animals. The categories are features, definition, and example. A simple definition of habitat of animals is a habitat is a place where an organism makes its home. Here in the definition, we have highlighted some keywords: habitat, place, organism, and home. Then features. What are some of the features of a habitat of animals? Shelter, water, food, and space are features or characteristics of the habitat of animals. Then we have examples of habitat of animals. That is desert, meadow, woodland, grassland, forest, seashore, ocean, and the list goes on. Now, when it comes to certain words from a vocabulary set, we might find it hard to understand what they are, or we might not be able to explain it to children. So here we can just use pictures. For example, there's a picture of a desert here, there is a picture of a grassland here, and there is a picture of a woodland here. Now that we have come up with the vocabulary set for habitat of animals, how do we ask simple questions regarding habitat of animals? Okay. So here are some here are some questions regarding the habitat of animals given in the Kalika Chetrike scripts uploaded for you on Teachopia. Let's listen to how they will be said in a classroom. Where does a lion live? Where do bees live? Which animal lives in the water? Which birds live in trees? Now, after the questions from the Kalika Chetrike, what are other questions we can ask regarding habitat of animals? Like we have learned in the last module, here is where we use question frameworks to help teachers ask many questions using one simple formula. And we have just learned how to use vocabulary from the vocabulary set in those question frameworks. Here we have three different kinds of question frameworks for habitat of animals. Do you know what a habitat is? What has shelter and food? Can you tell me what a desert looks like? Now, here we see that for each of these questions, we can replace different words from the vocabulary set and ask many more questions. So, for do you know what a habitat is? The word habitat can be replaced with different words or phrases from the category definition. What has shelter and food? Here we can replace shelter and food with one or more words from the category features. Can you tell me what a desert looks like? Here we can replace desert with one or more words from the category examples. So here, do you know what a habitat is? We can replace it with a phrase from the definition, from the category definition. Do you know what a place where an organism makes its home is called? Here, where do you find shelter and food? We can replace shelter and food with other features. So we can ask, where do you find water and food? Now, can you tell me what a desert looks like? Here we can replace desert with any example from the category examples. So we can ask, can you tell me what a grassland looks like? Now, this is an activity that will be displayed during the teacher training session. And like we have discussed in the beginning of this session, and also we have in length spoken about in the previous module, this is where we would like your assistance, that is the teacher mentor's assistance, to help us conduct these activities. This is a talking activity where the teachers will talk to the teacher mentor. So when we see the icon of this activity, if you look at the top right corner, there is a single person and a speaking bubble. This is an activity where the teachers will talk directly to the mentors. That is, individually, they will speak to the mentors in the center. So when this activity is displayed, what are some of the teacher mentor tips you can follow? If you look at this activity is a question framework activity where they have now got to replace words and phrases from the different categories that they have been through in the question framework and ask more questions. So how will you help teachers ask more questions during this activities. Let's look at some tips. Here are few steps you can follow. Just like we learned last time, the most important thing that we need to do is repeat the question. And here, since there are 3 questions, you will repeat each question one at a time. And then you will use an example of your own to help the teachers in your Sanchalana centers understand what they need to give as an example. Now, here it's where you will use your teacher mentor script. As you remember, for the previous module, we had sent out a teacher mentor script for your assistants to be used in the Sanchalana center. Let us practice using a small snippet from that script. So first you will repeat the question. For example, question 3 was, can you tell me what a desert looks like? So if you're dealing with this question, you will repeat this question. Can you tell me what a desert looks like? And then you will use an example using your teacher mentor script. So here is a small excerpt from your teacher mentor script. And this is how you can use it in the in the Sanchalana center. Okay. So here is an example from the teacher mentor script. Now, this will be given in your teacher mentor script. And how do you use it? While giving an example. So this is what you can tell the teachers. Okay, the word desert belongs to the category examples. Can we, dear teachers, come up with a word with one word or many words from the same category to replace in this question framework? Let me give you an example. An example I can come up with is, can you tell me what a meadow looks like? Now, can you also give me some examples? You can replace the word with one or multiple words from the category example, like desert, meadow, woodland, grassland, forest, seashore, etc. So, this is how you can help the teacher mentors come up with questions on their own. You give them an example, and once you give them an example, they will be able to understand what they need to do. Can you tell me what a seashore looks like? Excellent. Good job. Right. Now, this is the second kind of question that we are going to be including as a talking activity this time. Since we want teachers not only to depend on frameworks and given scripts, we want teachers to also start learning how to come up with questions all by themselves. So here we have 1 minute where teachers will try and come up with a question based on the statement they see on the screen. So when an activity like this is displayed, how can you, as a mentor, help them come up with questions based on this statement? The statement here is from the definition of a habitat. A habitat is a place where an organism makes its home. Now, the question here in the activity slide says, can you frame one more question based on this definition? Now, let's see how we can help teachers come up with questions based on this definition. Here is what you can do. You can repeat the question, you can read the statement, and then you can ask for responses using prompts from the teacher mentor script. Let's practice. You repeat the question given to you on the slide. Can you come up with one more question based on this definition? Then you read the statement given. A habitat is a place where an organism makes its home. Now you ask teachers for responses using the mentor script. Let's try to come up with some questions of our own. Can you think of a question based on this statement? Or if a child should come up with an answer like this, what kind of question can you ask them? You can repeat this in Kannada if required for them to understand better and come up with a question. Language tool number 3 is simple questions. Language tool number 3 is simple sentences. Now, here are some sentences from the Kalika Chetrake scripts regarding habitat of animals.
The lion lives in the forest. A parrot lives in the tree. Fish live in the ocean.
Now, apart from these sentences, what are some of the sentences we can speak about habitat of animals? An animal habitat is made up of shelter. Here we can replace the word shelter with different features like water, food, and space. Then Desert is an example of an animal habitat. Here we can replace desert with different types of examples like woodland, tree, seashore, ocean, etc. A habitat is a place where an organism makes its home is definition. Now, when it comes to the definition, we need to make teachers practice saying the definition over and over again so that they use the same definition in the classroom when it comes to the topic. By repeating the definition itself as a statement, we will help children understand what the topic means and help them remember this definition. Here again, we have a combination of categories in a simple sentence. You can find shelter in a desert. Here, shelter belongs to features and desert belongs to examples. So we can replace shelter with any features and we can replace desert with any example. The desert is a type of place where an organism makes its home. Here, desert again belongs to examples, so we can replace it with any example. A place where an organism makes its home is a part of the definition. We can replace it with the correct part of the definition if necessary. Now, here is another activity that will be displayed during the teacher training session. How can you help teachers come up with more sentences by picking words from different categories and replacing them? Okay. Here again, the basic rules we must remember is repeat the sentence and use an example. Let's practice. You repeat the sentence for the teachers. The desert is a type of place where an organism makes its home. Now you use an example. So in your mentor script, this is a type of dialogues that you will have. The word desert belongs to the category examples, and the phrase a place where an organism makes its home belongs to the category definition. Can we replace this using words and phrases from the same categories? Let me tell you an example of my own. You can find food and shelter in a field. You can replace food and shelter with one or multiple words from features, or you can replace desert with any example from the category examples. Now, here we have learning outcome 6.6. Let's move on to the next segment, which is role play and poems. Under learning outcome 6.6, we have the statement students participate in activities like role play and poem recitation. Now, we have learned how to come up with a vocabulary set, simple sentences, and simple questions when it comes to a topic given in the Kalika Kshetrake. While we have easily picked out topics for milestones, when it comes to more complex learning outcomes like role plays and poems, how do we identify the topic? Once we identify the topic, we can come up with vocabulary set, simple questions, and simple sentences. But let's see in a few simple steps how we identify the topic first.
These are a few steps that can be undertaken to identify whether the following text that is in a written form is either a poem or a role play. First, we need to read through the poem or the role play and underline the words that we find most important, namely keywords. And then asking ourselves the questions as to what is this talking about, or what is the main idea that the poet wishes to convey through a poem, or the main idea that is dealt with in a role play. The answer will be your topic, the topic that you need to talk about and teach the learners. Here is a simple example that has been taken from the Kalika Chetarike handbook for you from LO 6.6, Activity 4. The poem is on Mary Had a Little Lamb, and it is our responsibility now to find the topic of this particular poem. So, for example, if we take up the first step, which is to read through the poem, we read it word by word as a poem. For example, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. So on and so forth, we read the entire poem. And next, we find out words or concepts that are generally repeated or related to each other. Here we have Mary had a little lamb as our first line, and throughout the poem, we have lamb and Mary repeated quite often. This leads us to our first question as to what is the main idea that the poet wishes to convey or express through this poem. Could you let us know what you think is the main idea that the poet wishes to convey through the poem Mary Had a Little Lamb on your chat? There is a 1 minute timer for all of y'all to give us your answers. Love and care, very nice. Relationship between Mary and the little lamb, good. About lamb softness, nice. Feelings, bonding, love between Mary and the lamb, wonderful. So these are emotions. Thank you. So these are some of the ideas the poet wishes to convey or express here in the poem. And the same steps can be undertaken to identify the topic for a role play. For example, if we did took these steps in a poem and we come up with the answer for this question, the answer could probably be pet animals. It could talk about how a little girl is very fond of her pet and the pet is fond of her too. And thus we come up with a topic. Now, if we take up a role play, here we have a Sanchalana activity for all of you. Here, we require you to first display, as this excerpt is displayed for all of you all, explain of how this is a role play and how this is a conversation between two characters, namely Harshit and Kalyani. And in order to find the topic of this role play, they must undertake 3 steps. First, read it out loud for them, underline and identify the important words that are maybe repeated or related, and then ask them the question as to what is the main idea that these two characters are talking about.
Now, if you are the teacher and the teacher mentor at the center, how would you help teachers do this activity and identify the topic for this role play? Now, we have gone through the 3 steps. First, you repeat the question for them. Second, you follow the 3 steps together. So first you tell them, you repeat the question for them, then you follow the 3 steps. Step 1 is you read through the poem or the role play dialogues. Step 2 is you underline any words or phrases that are related and repeated. And step 3 is you ask the question in particular for role play. For role play, the question is, what is the main idea the characters are talking about here? Then you allow teachers to come up with responses, and to help them respond, you read prompts from the script.
Here, when this particular role play conversation is displayed, we are to read it out loud for them. Here we have Kriti playing the role of Kalyani, and I would read out the dialogues for Harshit. I heard you have a library at home.
Yes.
May I borrow some books?
Yes, of course.
Can you please tell me your address?
Door number 205, second cross, Kote area.
Shall I come tomorrow evening?
Yes, you're always welcome.
So, teachers, please note that you can read the role play out for the teachers at the center. But also, what you can do is what we just did now. That is, you can have 2 teachers from your center read out the different characters' dialogues. This will also help them get a sense of what the role play is. The next step is you follow the 3 steps together. After you read through the role play dialogues or you have them performed by 2 teachers, you underline any words or phrases that are related. Now, in this role play, we see that the words library and books are related. While we might not have words that are repeated, but these two concepts are related and seem prominent. Then you can ask the question. Now we had two questions, one for poem and one for role play. And since this is a role play, this is the question we will be asking. What is the main idea the characters are talking about here? Here, the characters are talking about going to the library or picking up books from the library. Now, here we will not answer this before the teachers come up with some responses. So, you allow the teachers to come up with responses by themselves. And in your mentor script, you will have some prompts for answers. For example, if you see the excerpt from the mentor script here, under answer prompts, you have a prompt like the characters are talking about a place. What place are they talking about? So these are some sentences or questions you can use to help teachers come up with the answer. And after you do this exercise, we would have deduced that the answer could be the library.
Now that we have got the main idea for this role play is library, let us look at the vocabulary set for the topic library. As you can see, there are three categories for the word library, which is features, definition, and example. The definition can be a library is a collection of books or is a room or a building where collection of books are stored. So here you can see some of the words which are in bold, like library, books, or is a room or a building or collection of books that are stored. And features of the word library or the topic library can be quiet room, bookshelves, librarian, lots of books. An example can be government library, school library, and college library. Moving on to the next language tool, that is simple questions. Here we'll look at some of the questions that we can use as a framework to form many questions. The first question can be, where can you find a collection of books? Here, the word or the phrase, a collection of books, can be replaced with the definition vocabulary set. Then comes the next question framework, that is, where can you find bookshelves? Here, the word bookshelves belongs to the features category. All you need to do is to replace the word bookshelves from the words or the list of words given in the features category list. Then comes the next question framework, that is, can you tell me what a school library looks like? Here, you can replace the word school library from the category of examples. Here are some more questions that we can frame using this vocabulary set. That is, where can you find a collection of books and where can you find a library can be two question frameworks where you can replace the underlined words from the words or phrases from the category definition. And then comes the category of features where you can use these two question frameworks like what is a place with bookshelves and a librarian called? What is a place with lots of books called? You can replace the words bookshelves, librarian, and lots of books with the other words from the category of features. Then, can you tell me what a school library looks like? And can you tell me what a college library looks like? Are the two frameworks that you can use to create more questions for the category of examples, where you can replace the words school library and college library with the other words from the example category. Here is an activity. As you can see, there's an icon which says it's a pair work activity where you can ask your teachers in the center to act upon or create more questions and express it to the other person in their pairs. The first framework that they can use to create more questions is from the definition category. The question is, where can you find a collection of books? Here, your teachers can replace these words or the correct part of the definition instead of a collection of books. The definition being a library is a collection of books or is a room or a building where collection of books are stored. And the next one, for simple features, the framework looks like: what is a place with bookshelves and a librarian called? Here, teachers can replace the words bookshelves and librarian with the words from the simple features category. And then you can replace the word school library in the question framework. Can you tell me what a school library looks like with the words from examples category? Mentors, at this particular point where this activity is supposed to be conducted on the day of Sanchalana, here are some of the tips that you need to follow. The first one, as you all know, is to repeat the question, and the second one is to use an example. Let's see how this looks like while conducting an activity. Here, all that you need to do is to make sure that the pairs are working together, where both the people in the pairs are coming up with as many questions as possible during the time given to them. And remember, this is a pair work activity. Here is a second activity, and this is also a pair work activity where the different features of a library are a librarian, quiet room, and lots of books. These are different features of a library. The words under the features category are librarian, quiet room, and lots of book. And the teachers, the pairs have to come up with more than one question based on the features. During this activity, make sure, again, your teacher mentors, please make sure that your teachers in the center are actively participating in the pair work. And as a steps, please repeat the question. Can you come up with one more or more than one question based on this definition, and ask for responses using the prompts? Like, these prompts are given in the mentor script, which will be provided to you, and you can see this here. Like, what are some questions we can ask based on this statement? Based on this statement, allow the participants to come up with as many questions as possible in their pairs. Then, if you wanted your learner to answer your question with this sentence, what will you ask them? So maybe asking these prompts can help the teachers to come up with many questions. Let us look at the language tool 3. Here are some of the sentences or sentences that we can use while having a role play in our class.
Here are a few instructions that the teacher can give out to her learners in the class by stating or telling, read out the dialogues individually first and then practice it with your partner. This kind of voice modulation is generally used to help you, as the listeners or a third person, understand the context of the story.
Now, let us look at some of the sentence frameworks for the topic library. For creating some simple sentences for simple features, we can come up with a sentence like: a library is made up of bookshelves and a quiet room. Here, the words bookshelves and a quiet room can be replaced with the other words like librarian or lots of books under the simple features category. When it comes to examples, a government library is an example of library. Here, the word government library can be replaced with the words like school library or college library, which are given under the category of examples. When it comes to definition, as we all know, the definition for library is: a library is a collection of books or is a room or a building where collections of books are stored. Here, we would request all the teachers to repeat this definition for enough number of times to help our learners understand this topic. So, teacher mentors, while this particular simple definition is being read out, please make sure that you also emphasize on repeating this definition for our teachers to understand how it is important or how much it is important for us to repeat this definition for to help our learners to understand this topic. You can also create sentences by combining two categories. Like, you can find lots of books in the school library. Here, the word or the phrase, the lots of books, is from the category of features, and school library is an example which you can replace with the words from features and from the examples. The government library is example for a room or a building where collection of books are stored. You can also say a government library is a library or a room or a building where collection of books are stored. You can replace the word government library with the school library, and you can form the school library is an example or a room in a school or a building where a collection of books are stored. You can replace the words according to their categories. Here is an activity that needs to be conducted on Saturday. It's a pair work activity, and when this slide appears during the presentation on Saturday, we would request all the teacher mentors to conduct this activity in the respective Sanchalana center. You can find lots of books in the school library. Here, the word lots of books and school library belong to two different categories, and we would request you all to allow the participants and to encourage them to come up with more number of sentences where they can use two categories. And it's a pair work activity, and we would request you to help them to work in pairs. While they are working in pairs, repeat the sentence, and then you can give an example to it to help them to come up with more sentences. So, till now, we have looked at how we can come up with a vocabulary set for particular topics. But whatever we have seen till now is very limited. This would help you, this framework would help you to come up with your own vocabulary set.
So, when you are dealing with a topic in the classroom, and whichever milestone or whichever learning outcome that you're dealing with, how is it that you, as a teacher mentor, or a teacher, can come up with a vocabulary set on your own? And how do we teach teachers to develop vocabulary sets by themselves? So, here are some steps that we can use to practice this and to help teachers slowly start developing vocabulary sets on their own. Step one is we use Google to find the definition, features, or examples for any topic. Step two is we can add similar words based on the topic from the textbook or workbook or teacher handbook, depending on which category we're looking for. And step three is we use simple sentences and simple questions to talk about the topic. And like we have seen so far, we can integrate or use words from each of these categories in our sentences and our questions. Now, teacher mentors, please note that since we will not be able to take you through the steps in details, we have a document for you with screenshots and with the steps described in details for you to be able to take teachers through it and also help them uh, develop their vocabulary sets by themselves. Now, let's look at some speech tips. Let's learn how to pronounce poems and tongue twisters.
Let's pronounce a few tongue twisters. Please repeat after me as we go through each word and not confuse the pronunciation with the other. She sells seashells on the seashore.
She sells seashells on the seashore.
A proper copper coffee pot.
A proper copper coffee pot.
Red leather, yellow leather.
red leather, yellow leather.
I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream.
I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream.
I saw a kitten eating chicken in the kitchen.
I saw a kitten eating chicken in the kitchen.
Now let's learn how to recite a poem, but let us first remember that the word poem is pronounced as poem. Could you please repeat after me? Poem.
Poem.
Very good. So here we go. There's a fly inside my bedroom. It's driving me insane. It's buzzing round my wardrobe. It's on the window pane. It's flying round the lampshade. It's coming very close. It's landing on my pillow. It's walking on my nose. Now, this is how a poem is generally recited, with pauses for commas, a longer pause for semicolon, and a complete pause for a full stop or a couple of full stops, and an exclamation in your voice and your intonation when there's a word. There are a few words that need such voice modulations. I'd request all of you to repeat those keywords in the same tone after me. Inside,
Inside.
insane,
Insane.
buzzing,
Buzzing.
on the window pane,
On the window pane.
round,
Round.
lampshade,
Lampshade.
very close,
Very close.
landing,
Landing.
pillow,
Pillow.
walking,
Walking.
looking,
Looking.
eyeball,
Eyeball.
phew,
Phew.
again,
Again.
ceiling,
Ceiling.
driving,
Driving.
buzzing,
Buzzing.
again,
Again.
never,
Never.
is such a pain,
Is such a pain.
on the floor,
On the floor.
yes,
Yes.
door,
Door.
buzzed off,
Buzzed off.
now,
Now.
but wait,
But wait.
buzzing,
Buzzing.
surprise, surprise.
Surprise. Surprise.
Here is how we show emotions through our voice modulations with every punctuation mark that is given in a poem. And that is how a poem recitation is quite different from the way a story or a text is read.
Now, what would you monitor during this listening activity? Two things, as we have discussed before. One, are the teachers actively repeating? Please feel free to look around your Sanchalana center. Look for teachers who are not repeating or are hesitating to repeat. Walk up to them and remind them that this activity is to help them pronounce correctly. Second, you need to look for teachers and check if they are repeating correctly. And if a teacher is not repeating correctly, do not hesitate to walk up to them and ask them to repeat the pronunciation like the presenter.
Now, moving on to the next part of the LO, which requires us to conduct debates in the classroom. Here is how we'd like to help you all learn how to facilitate a debate. Because debate is not only between the participants, but it is an interaction between the facilitator and the participants. So before a debate is conducted by a teacher or by all of you all as teacher mentors with the teachers as a post-webinar activity, we'd first like you all to undertake two important steps. The first step that a facilitator of a debate must undertake is to choose an appropriate topic. The choice of topic must be grade and age appropriate. Why do we say appropriate? It is by first keeping in mind the learner's familiarity with topics. We cannot take topics that they are not familiar or exposed to. And so, to make it a little more simpler and easier, we could take up topics right from the grades textbook. This way, we are sure that they have learned or have heard about the topic. It is not necessary that we need to take these topics from the English textbook, but rather science or social science textbooks are also good enough. And if at all we choose to take topics outside the textbook, let us keep it age and experience relevant. Let us see if the students or the learners are exposed to that particular topic in their day to day lives, either in their families or either in the society or amongst their friends. Having this in mind, let us come up with a list of topics that could be debated upon. Next, it is important that the facilitator, for example, here the teacher mentors or the teachers in the classroom, first and foremost, come up with the pros and cons of the debate for themselves before they expect the learners to come up with pros and cons. When we say prepare pros and cons, what do we mean? We mean that when a topic is chosen, we must first write down the advantages and disadvantages of that particular topic and keep a minimum of 5 points each so that we could cover a broad domain of the topic. Here is how we could conduct and facilitate a debate and ask the teachers or the learners in the classroom to prepare for the debate. How do we do this? We take them through the 3 steps that we've already learned, the 3 language tools, which is a vocabulary set, simple questions, and simple sentences. Here is the first step of undertaking the vocabulary set. And today we learned how the vocabulary set has simple or 3 broad domains, namely definition, features, and examples, and how by just filling out these 3 categories, the learners or the teachers could come up with wonderful points for advantages and disadvantages. Let us consider these 3 categories as 3 empty buckets in which important words or keywords must be filled. If at all, the topic for the debate is chosen and it is on zoos as a home for animals, let's see how we can prepare for advantages. Advantages, first we fill out the definition bucket. We describe or define how zoo is a home for animals in a positive way. We talk about how they are safe and enclosed space for animals, how they are controlled and monitored by the animal welfare department. And then when we take up the features bucket, we fill it with uh, characteristics of the zoo as a home. What are the characteristics? They are generally put into cage and they have human interactions and interference as much as possible. And when we come to the last bucket, which is the examples category, we could give examples for each of the features. For example, if human interference or interaction is a feature, we could give examples of how animals interact or humans interact with animals in a zoo. The first thing is that those animals are constantly fed by humans. And if they are ill or hurt, medical attention is also given to them by humans. This is how words could be put into these 3 buckets, namely definition, features, and examples, and advantages can be come up with. And the only mild difference between advantages and disadvantages is that definition, features, and examples are all a little positive towards the topic under advantages and negative under the categories under disadvantages. For example, this topic zoos as a home for animals could be disadvantages by bringing up certain important keywords. Like for in the definition category, we give words like how it is an artificial space and it is not natural, and that it is altering nature. And in the features category, we could say of how it is man made, it's controlled, it's manipulated. And then giving examples for these features, we could say of how it is unethical to restrict animals, and we could show them some pictures of how this is not very good for the animals. So, thus, using the vocabulary set and the three categories under the vocabulary set, debates can be prepared for. There is nothing to fear as to how the learner is going, or how he or she is going to prepare for this topic, because just giving these categories and asking them to fill these categories would give them ample words to talk about that topic, either positively or negatively. But let us remember that the teacher mentors or the teachers must assign this to two different groups of learners. Advantages must be clearly stated to the first group, and disadvantages should be clearly stated to the second group. And while dividing these groups, the following questions could be given to them as simple questions or simple instructions. What are those instructions? For the group that is preparing on the advantages of the topic, we could call them the for group and tell them to keep these simple questions in mind while preparing for the advantages, which are: what are its uses? How is it beneficial? What problems does this solve? And when we hand out the topic to the advantages group and call them the against team, we could tell them that your answers and points must be based upon these particular questions, namely, how is it not helpful? What problems is it creating? How is it impacting somebody or someone in a negative way? So, this way, we could also be following the second tool in the language tools, which is simple questions. And once the learners or the teachers come up with answers for these simple questions, we have simple sentences. And simple sentences gives us an ideal debate output. This is how advantages and disadvantages are listed down by both the groups by first working on the vocabulary set, answering the simple questions, and coming up with simple sentences. Say, for example, advantages of having a zoo as a home for animals could be: humans can visit wild animals at one place altogether. Endangered species can be monitored and taken care of by animal experts. And a few disadvantages that could come up with is: a natural space is replaced by man made settings for animals. Animal behavior is altered by human intervention. And thus, having come up with these points, the teams could discuss and have an ideal debate session. Teacher mentors, we'd request you to carefully follow these steps when you're conducting the post webinar activity. And for your help and reference, there is details of this post webinar activity given in the teacher mentor script, which would be circulated amongst all of you. Please go through the steps carefully so that you may follow them on Saturday. And you also have an example or a sample script available on Teachopia, which gives you two examples of two debates, points that can be come up with those two debate topics, and other topics that you could use in the Sanchalana as well, and also how you could instruct them in English. So please do kindly refer to the script and to the sample script on Teachopia.
Thank you, teacher mentors. And so this would be the end of our teacher training session. Now let us look at a few post-webinar activities that we have given for the teacher mentors exclusively to take, and for for you to practice with the teachers after the session is over. So the first is assessments. Uh, we had also heard from a lot of teachers that coming up with questions for assessments based on topics was something that was a required skill. Now, here are two things that we're going to discuss in the post webinar activity, which is how to use question frameworks to get responses from students about a topic. And since we have looked at three basic types of vocabulary, we're going to use that itself to come up with questions. We will show you how that is done. Second is we're going to look at how to conduct a debate using the script uploaded on Teachopia. Very briefly, we're just going to take you through a few screenshots of a sample script that is uploaded for you on Teachopia, and just very quickly tell you how you can conduct a debate activity with the teachers using this script. So now when it comes to question framework, so what are some simple questions or question frameworks we can use to make students give us definition based on a topic that is given from the Kalika Kshetra. So when it comes to a definition, here are some kinds of questions we can ask. What is dash? Define dash. Do you know what dash is? How do you know about dash? Here you can replace the dash with any topic from the Kalika Kshetra, like shapes, habitat of animals, vehicles, months, days, neighborhood, etc. Let's look at a sample. Now we have a topic in LO 6.5, that is adverb. So if you want to ask children questions based on adverbs, and you want them to give you a definition of adverbs, here are some questions you can ask. What is an adverb? Define an adverb. Do you know what an adverb is? And so on. Now, when you want to ask children questions based on features, and you want them to tell you the features or characteristics that you've taught them about a particular topic, here are some questions that you can ask. Tell me some characteristics about dash. How do you identify a dash? Now, here you can replace the dash with any topic: shapes, habitats, vehicles, months, nouns, adverbs, verbs, so on and so forth. Now, here are some comparative questions. How is dash different from dash? You can replace the dashes with the topic and with a comparative topic. Let's look at an example of this. Now, if you're asking questions about animals, you can say, tell me some characteristics about an animal. How do you identify an animal? If you're asking a comparative question, you can ask, how is an animal different from a bird? Now, here are some questions based on examples. If you want children to give you examples about a particular topic, what are some of the questions you can ask? Give me some examples of dash. Name some examples of dash. What are the different kinds of dash? Have you seen different types of dash? What are they? What kinds of dash have you seen? Now, the dash can be replaced with any topic: shapes, habitat, vehicles, months, days, neighborhood, so on and so forth. Here, some questions you see can be replaced with other kinds of questions. For example, have you seen different types of dash? You can replace have you seen with any type of question like do you know, have you experienced, have you visited, etc. You can replace seen in the question what kinds of dash have you seen with any sensory input. What kinds of dash have you tasted? What kinds of dash have you touched? Let us look at some examples using the topic shapes. Can you give me some examples of shapes? Name some types of shapes. What are the different kinds of shapes? Have you seen different types of shapes? What are they? What kinds of shapes have you seen? Now, when you have asked children these questions, and these are response based questions, how do we use the rubrics given in the Kalika Kshetra K for responses to help us grade them? For example, if you're asking a question about adverb, you're asking the question, what is an adverb? If a student does not respond to this question or gives you irrelevant responses such as bird, cow, you can call them as level 1, and this is you can mark them as level 1. Suppose when you ask the question what is an adverb, a student is able to express in just a few words like fast or run fast, you can call them as level 2. Now, if a student is able to speak in small phrases or meaningful and simple sentences, such as when you ask what is an adverb, they are able to say fast run is an adverb, or when you add fast to run, when you add a helping verb. These are small phrases or simple and meaningful bits of sentences. You can label them as level 3. Now, when a child expresses as given in the chapter or in the topic or in the story, and they are able to give you a correct sentence based on the question you are asking. For example, what is an adverb? When they answer you and say, when you add a helping verb to a verb, such as fast or slow, it is called an adverb. This is a full sentence. And now you can mark them as level 4. So you can use these rubrics for different responses based on what questions you're asking them and based on how much of a response they're giving to you. Now, let's very quickly look at debate activity instructions. When you are when you are using the two scripts given for debate on the Teachopia app, what are some of the activity instructions that you can follow?
So here is a snapshot of how the script available on Teachopia looks like. Here, the script would first give you not only instructions but the dialogues that you could use as a teacher in the classroom while executing those instructions. For example, when you're choosing a topic, we'd like you to make it grade appropriate, have it from the textbook, and keep it within the framework of the learner's experience and exposure. And we've also given you certain instructions as to how you can come up with advantages and disadvantages, and how you can prepare yourself as a facilitator for the debate. We've also given a list of topics that could be used during the Sanchalana and in the classroom as debate topics. For example, public transportation is the most efficient mode of transportation, learning through television. So you could ask the teachers and the learners in the classroom to come up with advantages and disadvantages with regard to these sample topics. You could always come up with more. And here, as displayed on the screen, these are scripts that are available for you on the app for you to be able to instruct the students in English. For example, if you want to set the context for the debate and give out instructions to the students, but you want to keep it all precisely in English, here are a few dialogues that you could say by saying, we will all participate in a debate now. Are you all wondering what a debate is? It is a group activity where important decisions are made, so on and so forth. So we'd request all of you all to refer to this script, which has topics of debate available, which has instructions for the facilitator, as well as dialogues that the teacher could use in the classroom while facilitating a debate or conducting a debate.
Here we end the module. If there are any questions, we would request you to post the questions in the chat box. Over to you, Prasanna sir.
ಇವತ್ತಿನ ಶುಭ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಟ್ಟಂತ CWC ತಂಡಕ್ಕೂ ಶಾಂತವಾಗಿ ಕೇಳಿದಂತ ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಅನಂತ ವಂದನೆಗಳನ್ನ ಅರ್ಪಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಶುಭ ವಿದಾಯ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಶನಿವಾರ ಸಿಗೋಣ. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು ಆಲ್.
Thank you all.